So I've been harping a lot lately on my different channels about people reading more, in particular fiction books and things that kind of excite the imagination and excite the brain differently than, self-help or nonfiction, political insta books that seem to pop up all over the place. I think fiction has a strong history that is largely being ignored, and people are just not reading it the way they used to, at least in the numbers they used to. And I think that's a problem for the following reason. So I am a physicist. I do have a PhD in experimental physics. Um, I spent a long time working in that field, and now I work in artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is a very important field that is not going away. It is not going to disappear. You can't uninvent it. But what I think is going to happen is a lot of times we kind of forget to listen to certain things, and we kind of forget to think for ourselves. So if you look backwards in time at different people historically, of Carl Sagan, Isaac Asimov, and I'm not comparing myself to either of those two. They're much more well known than I am, and certainly in the case of Carl, shockingly smarter than I am. Isaac Asimov, I've never thought about him as a scientist. I know he had a background in it, but Carl, I kind of know his work. I know his fiction work very well. One of the first sci-fi books I ever read was Foundation. My dad handed it to me and said, "Here, read this. Great book." Um, but one of the things that frightens me as we look forward is the loss of critical thinking skills. And people don't just learn those, they don't just appear. And it's not a gift anyone has. I was not born with some kind of critical thinking skills. You weren't born with, we were born with a brain that we either teach to do things or we don't. Yes, some people have a higher capacity for that, but there's a whole lot of work we can do to kind of make up for any biological difference early. And having grown up surrounded by fiction books and having written some of my own, and one thing I can tell you is that reading those kind of makes you question some stuff and kind of makes you start to think, hey, is that really possible, right? Can we actually do what he put in the Foundation series as far as space travel and other stuff? Can we build robots that can be as useful as the ones in the series? And do we need would we want to? Do we want to build rules into those robots, such as Asimov suggested? He thought that went out pretty well. And one of the things I see in the next 10, 15, 20 years, and I'm not sure it's that far away, is AI is not going away. It is not going to become less a part of our lives. It is only going to become more a part of our lives. And yes, it is going to put a lot of people out of work. A lot of jobs are going to become superfluous. Anything that's repetitive in nature, anything that you have to kind of just memorize a series of steps, that's not going to be as useful as it once was. Um, some exceptions to that, obviously, but it's going to be, a lot of those are going to be replaceable. And by any stretch of the imagination, sort of 30 to 40% of the workforce is at jeopardy in the next 10 years. That's a big number, right? And that's a big number that's bigger and faster than any major shift in economic things that has ever happened. Because across a decade, 40%, that's a big fucking number. And that's not mine. That comes from a variety of sources. I came up with about 30% when I ran the numbers, but I've seen numbers in peer-reviewed journals from reputable economists, reputable scientists working together that put it anywhere between 30 and 40%. Um, that's big, right? So one thing that's going to become more and more necessary going forward, and I try to teach my kids, is how those critical thinking skills, those ability to think in ways the machines can't, and think in ways that robots can't, to do the more out of the box, creative, inventive stuff that you can't get from a machine. And you don't get that just by sitting down going, okay, I'm going to be creative today, right? You don't get it that way. And certainly when I was an undergraduate and a graduate student, yeah, I was so busy with physics, I didn't have a chance to do anything outside of that. And I think I should have taken the time. I should have maybe taken a little bit longer in school and more time to kind of do things outside of that. But to me, I think we're missing that in the world because we're all doom scrolling TikTok or looking at the latest whatever viral video it is. And that's great. Those are important things, but how much of our day really needs to be devoted to that? And how much of it maybe we should recover a little bit of our time and start looking at, fiction books again. This is actually one by this guy. He wrote a murder mystery. He made himself a character in it, which I thought was kind of cool. Um, the but is reading important? I firmly believe it is. And is reading something outside of nonfiction important? I absolutely think it is. Nonfiction is great. It has a place. But the reading in the fictional world actually teaches you a lot of things too. And one of the things that many psychological reports have said it teaches you is empathy. And I think that's one thing our world, modern day world, kind of misses, right? We don't really have it as much as we once did. So if I could spend the rest of my career doing anything, it would be to yes, we need to be in better communication with each other. Yes, these AI and machine learning tools are out there. They're going to be used, and they're important. But people need to start to develop those critical thinking skills again, and we need to start to think creatively, and we need to start to be far more tolerant of everybody else's opinion. I keep hearing these words, my truth, my facts, alternative facts. Facts are facts, right? That's a funny thing. The concrete is hard, right? Well, you'll have people who argue that. Well, yeah, but this is harder. Okay, great, but concrete is good enough for me to drive on, right? Therefore, it's pretty hard. So we need to kind of slow down on occasion, stop the arguing, and maybe learn to enjoy ourselves a little bit more. And one of the ways I think you can set yourself up for the future is by developing those critical thinking skills. And one of the places you can do that is just by picking up a fiction book, whether it's one of mine, one of his, one of Carl Sagan wrote a couple, Tom Clancy, you name it, pick an author, just grab one and go. If you don't like that author, pick another one. Not every genre is for everybody. So I hope everybody has a great day. Subscribe, like and subscribe to the channel if you want. I will talk about books far more. I've been a little bit slow lately on uploading some videos because I did get distracted with a few things, but there will be far more coming in the very near future. So probably doing some live streaming as well with a few other authors as that comes up. I will let everybody know and talk about their process. You'll find that most authors are actually pretty well-read people. They do tend to read a lot of other author stuff because it kind of gives you a chance to say, oh, well, I like that idea, but I would have done it this way, right? So it kind of lets you take a story a different direction. But certainly you read other authors for influence, right? I was influenced by this guy a bit. I haven't really done too much sci-fi stuff, but there's one in there somewhere. I read a lot of fantasy novels, although I am not going to write a fantasy book. Too much world building involved for me. But everybody, I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Uh, and subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing a lot more of these videos about books and what kind of mental health benefits you get out of it. Have a great day.